Good morning. Good to see you all here today. Well, Ann and I just got back from a little bit of a vacation, a broken vacation, up to Ely and the range cities up there for a music festival that goes on this time, well, in mid-July, classical. And so we were up there enjoying that. Had to come back in the middle of it briefly for a medical appointment, but otherwise we were up there for a while, and it was very good. It was good to get away, a little more relaxing than trips I used to take up that way before, where go back into the wilderness, the Boundary Water canoe area. Wilderness is just a little beyond Ely, and but didn't take in too much of that this time. Now I'm just getting too old, I think. Get into a canoe, and my main concern is to not flip it, which never used to be an issue for me. But while we were up there, well, it was maybe, I think many of you know Wayne and Irene, and they live. There's Wayne and his wife Marcia, and then Irene and her husband Pete. But so they're not married. If I say Wayne and Irene, I want to clarify that anyway. But it was good to see them, and done a lot of canoeing and that sort of thing with them. But it was Irene that introduced Ann and me to this music festival that they throw up there, and people from really all over the world come and perform there. And very interesting. And so we were up there, for that. And while we were there, I was talking to Wayne a bit. Oh, and Wayne, he has a place back in, not quite in the wilderness area, but it's pretty much like that. You can only get there with a four-wheel drive vehicle, and then with a canoe after you get as far as you can go with that. And Pat has property up there too on this particular lake where Wayne is. But so he, for all I know, Wayne might be watching this. Sorry, Wayne, if I say anything here to embarrass you or whatever. But Wayne spends many of his days up there, and he's done that pretty much his whole life. He's given a lot of time to, guiding people in the wilderness and living in the wilderness himself, really knowing that country, northern Minnesota and into Canada, and where it can get very cold, and in the winter, very nice in the summer. And anyway, Wayne he's a multi-dimensional man. There's many things to Wayne that I won't be speaking of here, but he writes very beautiful, interesting, maybe I could say compelling, poetry, haiku, and following the rules of haiku, the 5-7-5 rhythm, syllables, and all of that. But he does this, and I should say this too, that there's, and he sends me much of his haiku, and he also offered last year when Dharma Field was having a fundraiser. Wayne offered as something he could contribute to Dharma Field some of his poetry, and a haiku often is expressed according to the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and so Wayne offered that last year as his something he could contribute here. to Dharma Field, and I believe you can probably maybe even subscribe to it. Now, I don't know. I don't really know what the arrangement is, but I just wanted to say that. I should also say too that others of you have sent me your poems and stories and writings of various kinds, and so I'm a little reluctant to single any one of you out, but Wayne's stuff really touches me very deeply, and mainly because I'm also familiar with that country up there that he lives in, not to the extent that he is, and has really spent pretty much his whole life that way, living in that country and on the land, in a place where you can experience, as I said, bitter cold. 50 below zero would not be unusual. And that's Fahrenheit. Of course, the centigrade and the Fahrenheit scales, they cross at minus 40 degrees, 40 below zero. But it's very cold. We're talking 50 below zero or more. Nearby, the coldest record in Minnesota anyway is at 60 below, and that's in a town that's not too far from this place I'm speaking of here. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, but also to give credit to others who have sent me some of your poetry and that sort of thing. I want to thank you for that as well. There's Steve Titterroot, who often sends me haiku, and his is very, very humorous much of the time. And I've used, in fact, just a few weeks ago, I gave a talk using one of his haiku, and others as well. Ed Fissinger and others have sent me things. But in the case of Wayne here, though, he has quite an output, and to my mind, it is excellent. And I've long wanted to express this and to present some of his poetry, his haiku, to people here. But I felt it was difficult for me to single that out and to do that. But in looking at what he's presented recently, he sent me and Anne, he sent us his spring poems, or excuse me, his winter poems. He does it every season, but winter for 2023. And now more recently, we got his spring poems. I'm sure now he's working on summer poems. By the way, too, he tells me, and I can just sense it from his poetry, that he doesn't really write. He doesn't sit down here and try to figure out a poem and try to write it. It comes to him. It's inspiration, and I feel that in the words that he's putting to paper, and always amazed at what he can capture in just a few words. And he says this is how he writes it, and I trust that completely. And so there he is, and suddenly the lines just come to him. He writes them down, and that's what we have here. In other words, he's not calculating. He's not trying to figure this out or to impress or anything. He's just recording what is striking him, what's hitting him. A man who spends a great deal of time in solitude and quiet, and very close to nature. So I'd like to read a few of his poems here today, and maybe I'll offer a few words as we go here. But I'll start out with his, and this is only a fraction of what he sent us this past winter, or his winter poems for 2023, which actually probably starts in December of 2022. So, but and then I'll read some from his poems he sent us in the spring as well. So here, winter 2023. A white-furred weasel avoids pure disappearance through a black-tipped tail. A white-furred weasel avoids pure disappearance through a black-tipped tail. You know, in Zen we have well, there's the, oh, what is it now? I'm blanking out. The poem, we don't recite it that often. You'll know it, where they speak of hiding a heron. Well, that's what it says. It's really hiding an egret in the moonlight. Does anybody know what I'm speaking of?
Yes.
The piece, what is it, Mary? You don't remember either. It's okay.
No,
No, it's not that. Yeah. The Song of the Jumir Awareness. Song of Jumir Awareness, yes. And there's a line in there, hiding an egret in the moonlight, snow heaped in a silver bowl, hiding, where you have this, white on white, and yet it is there. And here he's saying that this white-furred weasel avoids a disappearance. It's snow, there's winter now in this chilly country. And the weasels and the squirrels and whatever else, the owls, many of the creatures are white now. And here this white-furred weasel avoids pure disappearance through a black-tipped tail. And anyway, it's just, this is kind of a metaphor, this idea, an egret in the moonlight, hiding an egret in the moonlight. Whereas white upon white is sort of the image there, and things can disappear in this way. They disappear our notice. We can't draw the distinction, see them separated out from what surrounds them, and there's no difference there. And this is also the flip side of this, which we find in things like the emerging of difference in unity and other poems as well as in the Song of Jumir Awareness. You get the flip of that too. Images of blackness hidden within blackness and darkness. Anyway, so that comes to mind when I read this. Another haiku here. A quiet presence falling in a snowy wood already deepens. A quiet presence falling in a snowy wood already deepens. Can you imagine that? This, of course, here we have I don't know if you're picking it up, but we have a power mower running somewhere here in the neighborhood. And where Wayne is and where he's speaking of, particularly in winter, but any time of year, it can be very quiet, very still. Have you been in a wood? The snow is falling. Sometimes you can hear it. If there's still some leaves on the tree or whatever, you might hear the snow striking the leaves. Or if it's just the bare branches, it can be just completely quiet and falling. But a quiet presence here, falling in a snowy wood already deepens. It already just takes us deeper. If we can just settle down to that and listen to this and to feel this and to realize this. Just thoughts upon thoughts coming and going as breath, even this stillness. Thoughts upon thoughts coming and going as breath. This is what we do as well. I mean, we're just constantly breathing. We don't notice the breathing as we breathe much of the time. And like so, thoughts upon thoughts coming and going as breath all the time. Even this stillness coming and going. When we turn our attention then to the stillness, and the stillness becomes something because we've turned our attention to it, now it becomes a thing. But that, if we pay attention to that also is coming and going. Whatever it might be that comes to us, thoughts upon thoughts, coming and going as breath, even this stillness. So this is really slowing down. Wayne is generally, you're coming from a very quiet place, from that environment. I told you a little bit about where he lives much of the time, and even through the winter. Yeah, he's up there and he lives in a tent. He has a wood stove in the tent, but you're getting 40, 50 below zero. You're going to want that. But he spends a great deal of time, and he has for much of his life, really knowing this environment and understanding it quite well. But then noticing thoughts upon thoughts. But even this stillness, he notices. Without seeming so, awareness amends this life just by letting go. Without seeming so, awareness, this is just pure awareness, amends this life which could be so cluttered and noisy and difficult and painful and worrisome. But here, without seeming so, just awareness, just capital A awareness. It's at the beginning of the second line here, but it would be capital A awareness, I think, if it didn't occur at the beginning of the line. Not awareness of thingness, not awareness of things, of ideas and concepts, of self and other, coming and going. Just awareness itself. The mind is on. It's up and running, so to speak. But without seeming so, awareness amends this life just by letting go. It's not holding on to anything. In holding on to something, we've engaged consciousness and thought and grasping and longing and loathing, and all these things begin to emerge and number taken away. And that awareness, well, that it's still present, it's always thus, always here, but we don't notice it. But also what we don't notice is that without seeming so, this awareness amends this life. And it does this, all the sorrows and pains, the things that we might want to be done with, these are amended, but how? Not in our usual way where we try to take hold of them and wrestle them to the ground or fix them up or, paste them over or cover them up and ignore and all the things that we might do. Here, it's awareness amends this life just by letting go. Just letting it go. Because with pure awareness, nothing is actually held. But also that is actually wordlessly understood and realized. There's no subject that realizes this, but it is immediate and direct, and it is known, even by you now. But we tend to ignore this because we're not letting go, we're grasping. And of course, with the grasping is me, myself, in the center of all this pain and worry, as well as frustration and trying to get or whatever else. I love this one. A raven's shadow glides smoothly over the snow, leaving all untouched. A raven's shadow glides smoothly over the snow, leaving all untouched. There's another. Letting go of truth relaxes a confined mind. This will set you free. Letting go of truth, of course, Wayne understands the two truths. This is small t truth he's using here. Letting go of truth. What would that be? Your truth or my truth? Ideas of truth, concepts, beliefs, things, objects of various kinds. Yeah, and this is really true. It's true. We're in a room, I would say, but this is not ultimately truth, not ultimately reality. So here, letting go of truth, this small truth, you just don't hang on to it. They come and go. That's perfectly fine. We can see that, feel that, understand that, maybe relate to it in some way in a limited time or space, and then let it go. But letting go of truth, this relaxes a confined mind that we're otherwise bound. And this is a small m mind, just like your personal mind. This is the way to relax it. Just let go. Of course, it's not so easy to let go, but it is helpful to know that this might be helpful for you. Notice what you're doing. Again, this is that awareness that amends this life. Just notice the hanging on, and in doing that, you realize that life becomes amended, and just this letting go alone. So letting go of truth relaxes a confined mind. This will set you free. Yeah, it will set you free, because with this truly letting go, there's no you that is bound in the first place. And it's a matter of realizing that when that is realized. Just, can you imagine? Don't try to imagine. But understand the freedom of that and what comes with that. Ice voices sing out, fluidity does not freeze, water ever flows. Ice voices sing out, fluidity does not freeze, water ever flows. Ice voices. Have you been out on a lake or near a lake? There's ice on the lake, maybe particularly if there's not a lot of snow cover. The ice will sing out. It moves and changes. And we can hear that here on Lake Harriet. And in the wintertime, it's beautiful when the ice begins to sing in some way or another. It's breaking and moving. Just from the changing dynamics of the atmosphere to help the ice to shift. I've known this. I grew up on, not quite on the shores, but I grew up next to Lake Superior. I was born there, grew up there. Lake Superior, it's the largest body of fresh water surface in the world. We know Lake Baikal now holds more water, but Lake Superior has the biggest surface of fresh water. It's a huge lake. It's an inland sea. And ice would form around the edges. It rarely would freeze over entirely. And where I grew up in Duluth, it was a big hill there. The whole thing is built on the side of a long hill. It runs up along the North Shore. The old Laurentian mountain chain, long worn down now. But is that noise bothering anyone there? I wonder if maybe those two windows, if they could be closed. Yeah, I don't know. I think out there the sound is, well, there too. Well, that's where the sound's coming from, I believe. Okay, maybe you could close those as well then. I think that helps a bit. That's good, Jose. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that. Quietude is part of the ambiance of these poems here by Wayne's, So, and for some reason, we seem to have people intent on using their power tools here today. So, well, what was I saying? Oh, I was just talking about how in Lake Superior, this large lake where the sun, sometimes the ice could freeze along the edges. From where I lived up on the hill, I could see in the wintertime, often you'd have open water way out there, miles out there. And and sometimes it would freeze over. That's when the real cold would start to hit us, in Duluth. And but I've also been on that shore when, in say the spring or so, in the water or the ice is beginning to break up a bit. I remember standing on that shore, standing on Lake Harriet as well, but it's not quite the same sound. We hear the lake singing when Lake Superior sings. There's a deep, thunderous, I couldn't get deep enough for it, but you can hear it, and maybe 2-foot sheet of ice there, 2 feet thick, splitting, and the thunderous sound of it, you can hear it ripping as it shoots out over the lake where the ripping is occurring. Just an incredible sound. I hear the same thing here with Lake Harriet and Lake Bidé-Makiska too, but I've walked around in the spring and you can hear the ice breaking up. And I don't know if that's what Wayne has in mind here, but even through the winter too, there's ice voices, there's different fluctuations in the fluid underneath the ice that makes these incredible voices, these incredible sounds. Ice voices sing out, fluidity does not freeze. And this fluidity, what is that? Well, this is this life. It is all entirely fluid, even the frozen surface of the lakes, with the snow drifting across. And he says, water ever flows. And of course, this is true, but everything is flowing. Yeah, even ice or water as ice. You might say, well, no, but when it's ice, now it's not flowing anymore. Yeah, we can say this, but actually glaciers flow. It is always flowing and changing, maybe at different speeds. You know, the windows here are flowing. They're all flowing downward. If you let them sit there for 50, 100 years, and then you go measure their tops, the thicknesses of the top and the thickness of the bottom, it'll be thicker on the bottom because that glass is slowly flowing down. But that's not really what we're speaking of here, that everything is flowing, moving, changing. Yeah. And in this process, the ice voices, and because what is seems to be permanent and hanging on still, not changing. These are, in many ways, singing out, maybe silently, but still singing out. Fluidity does not freeze. If fluidity froze, it wouldn't be fluidity. But this life, this reality is fluidity, at least from the point of view of those of us who think that there are things. Something else Wayne will speak of here, maybe if I move along fast enough. Okay. Evening sky colors reflecting on bare lake ice. Who can take this in? Have you ever felt that? Ever noticed that? In nature or in other situations as well? It can come over you. It's like, what is taking place? So he's describing a beautiful scene here, no doubt. Evening sky colors reflecting on bare lake ice. Who can take this in? We can slow down to the point where we can see this in anything, really. It doesn't have to be a beautiful scene necessarily, or a quiet scene, though that would certainly make us more inspired, perhaps, or open to seeing this. But there are those moments that can just catch you like that, and you stop. And in a quiet wood, or standing next to a lake, and seeing the sky colors reflecting on the bare lake ice. But who can take this in? And it's like you can't take it in. You've ever felt that? I remember once when I was at the Grand Canyon, and I was by myself. I first visited there with my family when I was 9 years old, and didn't have an experience quite like this. But some years later, I believe I was around 20, and I was there. I went there, and I was alone. I wanted to be alone. And it was in the off season. There were no tourists. Well, I was off on never mind where I was, but I was on the rim of the canyon, and it was just, who can take this in? It was that kind of a feeling. And it's like, what did I even want? What, to be the canyon? To know it how? Swooping through it like a bird? what? There was some longing there. I remember there were some stones there at my feet. I wanted to pick them up and put them in my mouth. I had an urge to do that. I don't think I did, but I remember having that urge. And, but just to take it in somehow. And, but what can you do? You know, you can just stand there and take it in. Well, we're always faced with this, no matter what, but usually the circumstances we're in and with other people and our busy lives, you know, coming and going, all of this, we don't quite notice this. But if things can settle down enough and quiet down enough, and a man like Wayne, you know, he's really sensitive to this. I think he was probably always had that, because he speaks of when he first came to that country as a teenager. And myself too. I first experienced it as a boy, 8 years old or so, but I came back as a teenager and started canoeing. And there's something about that place, well, any kind of wilderness though, I think, that can draw you out and help you to just settle down, quiet yourself. And so there's no one there to take any of this in. Because it's still, when you're still there to take something in, then there's like me desperately trying to, put a rock in my mouth as if that would help. No, you can, when you forget yourself entirely, when that can finally drop away, then you are the canyon, you are the lake, the reflected colors of the sky on the lake, the sky itself, whatever it might be, the song of the winter bird, you know, the chickadee or whatever it might be. Wayne goes on, he says, aesthetically, perfection lacks character. Beauty includes flaws. Yeah. It might seem a little strange at first. Aesthetically, perfection lacks character. Why would that be? Perfection lacks character. Beauty includes flaws. Yeah, if you had something that was flawless, would that be beautiful any longer? Whatever is forming here in the formed world of this and that and coming and going, you know, it will have flaws. There's nothing here that would be flawless as such. But perfection, yeah, that's flawless, but it lacks character. Lacks character. Why would that be? Because perfection is objectless. Perfection, this is objectless awareness. Nothing formed there. That is something that is appearing here as a result of, but it is consciousness. The breaking up of this perfection, this objectless awareness, into this and that and into the world of coming and going. This is all taking place together. And we can taste both of these. It is possible. Usually we don't taste that quiet one because it's not an object, but it is always there. But it lacks character. Yeah, there's nothing there to give it some character, some characteristic. Nothing you can even name or say, you know, so we're left kind of speechless. Who can take this in? Well, here's an interesting one here. He says, the moon is setting and soft shadows are merging into one darkness. The moon is setting and soft shadows are merging into one darkness. That's kind of a joke there, isn't it? Isn't that kind of funny? Wayne is noticing this. You can tell because of the very next haiku he writes, which I suspect when this came to him probably in an immediate sequence, because he sort of gives it away here. His next haiku says, a crooked birch twig puts a smile on the full moon just before setting. A crooked birch twig. Can you picture that? And then the moon behind, and so you see the birch in silhouette there. And a little curved little branch, you know. A crooked birch twig puts a smile on the full moon. just before setting. So there's a joke here, the moon, there's something funny here, something where he said just before the moon is setting, soft shadows are merging into one darkness. The moon is setting, soft shadows, you can imagine the shadows cast by the full moon as it's setting now. You can do that in winter. Summer it's harder to catch this because the days are so long, but in winter you can easily catch this. The moon is setting, the full moon is setting. And then a birch twig puts a little smile on its face. Is the moon playing a joke on us? The moon is setting and the soft shadows are emerging. And the moon, the full moon, in Zen is symbolic of enlightenment. And so here we have this, but it's setting right now. I mean, it's going away, it's disappearing. And but it's setting into this one darkness. So the shadows, these shadows cast by the moon, shadows of the branches and the trees, or whatever it might be, and maybe even the clouds sweeping by, but these shadows are now merging into one darkness, he says. There's something humorous about that, actually. And so the crooked birch of a twig, it puts a smile on the moon. Can you picture that? I'm sure Wayne probably saw this. But he also, I think, realized this more subtle thing that's in the backdrop behind this, and reads it as a smile. There's some reason that the moon would look at setting with a smile on its face. And just before setting. What do you suppose that is? And the shadows are merging into oneness, we could say into one darkness. But then in that darkness, well, once it is dark and the moon is set, the sun is down, the moon is set. Might be a little starlight out there. There's plenty of starlight. Maybe it's overcast today above you. And it's really getting dark. It's all merging into one darkness here. And then, so all is one then? Is that what that's saying? But you can't see anything. There's no distinctions to be made here. Everything is merged, And then the twig, or the twig on the birch is just putting a little smile on the moon as it sets. You can think about that. What is this saying? And what is enlightenment? And what about, in the merging of difference in unity? She told, he's looking at this in the darkness and the light. And in one stroke, in one way he's looking at it, is that the darkness merges everything. Everything becomes one. But wouldn't that be enlightenment, where we see everything as one? But the enlightenment is setting now, and all things are coming together as one. But it's setting, and it's leaving us with this realization, and it's putting a little smile on, because there's something else taking place here. There isn't anything really merging in the first place. And this oneness isn't dependent on that. And with the realization of this oneness, then, everything is understood and realized. There's no mystery to this. So a little bit of a smile, it's kind of like, okay, you want to look at all these different things. You can see where you are and the distinctions between this and that and yourself and other and all the rest of it. Put a little smile on the face, and this is going down. Because you can see, you can realize the nature of this is such that with this twig or that branch or this cloud or that thought or this feeling, there's no distinction. There's an aspect of this that is without distinction. This is that perfection, but it lacks, the perfection itself lacks character. It's all coming from these distinctions. But we make the mistake of then thinking that these distinctions are ultimately real. that there is a branch there, there is a tree there, there is a moon there. And somewhere in here, I'm running out of time here, he has something that speaks to this. Well, maybe fairly soon. There's a couple places where there's something that kind of relates to this. Maybe well, I'm going to jump ahead because I don't think maybe we won't get it. Here's from his spring poems here. Gazing out deeply into woods and snow-filled space. Okay, let me slow that down. Gazing out deeply into woods and snow-filled space still seems self-centered. Very subtle observation, as the one he just had. Very subtle way observation here. Gazing out deeply. Right above that, maybe I should read, he has two again coupled like the one of the moon here and the crooked smile setting. There's two haiku above, or read them together. Ever returning over and over again, just this returning. That's one. Returning to what? No thoughts or words can express. From them returning. Okay. Ever returning over and over. And this is what we do in our practice. We just return. We can return to the breath, but it's still a little coarse perhaps. Well, it can be quite subtle, but just returning. Just coming back. Realizing just this. Usually we're caught in the this and that out there, and we remain that way. And never realize that we're caught and that we're bumping around and grasping and searching and longing and loathing and all of this. So at some point we can return, yes, just simply come back. This is what our meditation is. That's it. That's the full extent of it. Your mind wanders off. There's pain and anxiety and excitement and all of that. And then but it's not even real. It's just going on in your mind. Just come back, just return. So ever returning over and over again. That's Zen practice. Just this returning, he says. And then this next haiku, he says, returning to what? Returning to what? No thoughts or words can express. Because if you express something, now you got a thing there, and now there's you, and now there's the longing and the loathing and the searching and the reaching, and as if any of this is ultimately real. It is not, as you can discover if you pay very careful attention to it. Things do not have the substance that we naively grant to them and suffer from as a result. Part of that suffering is that we'll never really truly understand them or the nature of them, whatever that word is referring to. Not just people, but things or feelings or thoughts. We take all these things as if they are things unto themselves, and now the whole world is dead. And the moon goes down with a little smile because, the opportunity will be given to you again. The merging, and then with the distinctions drawn, and then the merging and the distinctions drawn, as if these were two. Day and night, and the cycles of the moon. When will we finally see that there's nothing here to take hold of, and this is how we have it? And it is in realizing and thoroughly realizing that, not as an idea or a belief or a constructed thing of some sort, but just viscerally, an immediate understanding of this, that this is the nature of reality. There's real freedom in this, that one line that, this will set you free, says Wayne. So returning to what? No thoughts or words can express. From them returning. From that which cannot be expressed. And then he says, this is the one I'd read before there, then gazing out deeply into woods and snow-filled space still seems self-centered. Yeah. So even gazing out deeply into woods and snow-filled space is still, if we're really settled now and paying attention, it still can seem self-centered. In other words, it's still coming from a point of view, me, my point of view. And I am definitely something I'm very much concerned about. Most of us are, because that's everything. It's me. It's my life. It owns the whole world and the universe and everything in it. But it is nothing if I'm not here, enjoying this or seeing this or taking it in or something like that. So gazing out deeply into woods and snow-filled space, this can still seem self-centered. That's the thing to be noticing. It isn't like to drive it out or this is wrong or anything like that at all. But there's still a reaching for something there. It's me and then something else out there as well. Anyway, I think there's a lot here, and I think Wayne is really capturing it in very subtle expressions here, and with very few words as well. So here it is again, the moon is setting and soft shadows are merging into one darkness. A crooked birch twig puts a smile on the full moon just before setting. This is a smile. Everything's okay. The fact that we're still hanging on, but everything, in spite of that, everything's okay. Hanging on to this world, which is, it seems, if we're solid as we naively think, is threatening us in all sorts of ways today, with our global warming and all the rest of it, and our politics and whatever else. I think we can remain caught in the insanity and trying to fix it up and straighten it out, or we can see the nature of what is actually taking place here and be released. And now maybe you can do something to help somebody, but it won't be through the idea that you're going to try to help somebody. I will never do. Here, Wayne goes on here, he says, painful way to live, thinking as if thoughts are real or as if unreal. They're real enough, thoughts. This isn't to ignore everything that I was pointing out here and that Wayne was inspiring me to point out. This is not nothing. So a painful way to live, thinking as if thoughts are real. The thoughts aren't just the ideas and concepts and things that we might have, the beliefs and stuff like that. The thoughts are even of solid, seemingly solid things, material things, and things like space and time, everything that forms as an object to the mind in some way. Yeah. It's a painful way to live, thinking as if thoughts are real or as if unreal, because then it might seem, when that's pointed out, confusion there is in thinking that all these things are real, then it's like an invitation then to think that these things are not real, unreal. No, don't go, you can't go over there, because you're leaving this side here about real. That's just something here that's real, and now saying, you're going to be trapped as long as you think that those things are real, And so we go over this other place then. So we have to go over here where nothing is real. No, it's the same trap. This whole thing, this dualistic way of understanding what's being pointed out or what you hear or what you see is operating. And it's both going from this thing to that over there, or something in that order. We remain caught. We aren't seeing the whole picture of where this confusion can go on and take place. And it doesn't really matter that it's going on. I don't even know how you would stop it exactly, except it is possible to learn not to be caught in it. And no, as an ego, as a self, and now you want to bring these evil things and bad things and scary things to an end, and then you want to promote these good things and bring them forth and that sort of thing. In making all of these things real, treating them as if they actually are things unto themselves. This is all the pain, the suffering, the dukkha, the mistaken activity that we do, where we will destroy the environment and each other and fight wars and have conflicts of all sorts, interpersonal ones as well as, clashing armies or something. So, well, I really have gone, I didn't even really get to, there were a couple here that I really wanted to. Well, here's this one thing. Time seems to pass. I almost skipped this one. I thought, well, this is, I wouldn't say trivial. I didn't strike me that way, but it's like, there's not. And then all of a sudden I realized, no, this is actually, it says quite a bit here, where he says, time seems to pass. Things only seem to be things. Thus seemality. Time seems to pass. Things only seem to be things. Thus seemality. Not reality, but so we think of reality is, that's what it would seem, but actually what we have is seemality. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I thought that was brilliant, but also it seems like such a small thing. I thought, well, I don't know, I'll skip that one because I had to skip a lot. I had to cut them, but then all of a sudden I went back to it. I guess I looked at it. That's saying quite a bit. Anyway. Well, here's one of his spring poems. Oh, this is just kind of a funny one here in a way, I think. A woodpecker drums like an unanswered phone call urgently ringing. I thought that was pretty good. Then he says, not only here, kind of related to what we just looked at, then this is in his spring poems here, not that spring will necessarily jump out of these particular haikus here. He says, look, things are not things. Things could not be appearing if things were things. Look. If you could see directly, and I mean and you can, but just look at it, don't think about it, just look at what he's pointing out here. You would understand everything. This is it. Right there. It's just look. Things are not things. He's done a lot of things. I've tried to help point out some things that kind of show that things are not things exactly. Can't say that they're not things. Can't say they're unreal. Things are not things, but that thingness, but the solidness, not just of physical things, but the ideas and feelings and all sorts of things that we imagine, these mind objects that we have. It's not that solid. Look, we can see this directly. Things are not things. Things could not be appearing if things were things. And you can see that part. Things would not be appearing. That would be it. There's nothing more to realize than that. But you need to see that. And one of the best ways to kind of help bring you back to this pointing that he's offering here is just like in the act of being caught by this or that and realizing that you're reacting now in a way that isn't really necessary. You're reacting in a way that doesn't actually match this seemality or reality, which is really a seemality, kind of like a seem, that's S-E-E-M, seemality. So, but anyway, but there's some, I really should end it here. I thought I was going to leave a little time if you wanted me to I don't know what's to discuss exactly, but he talks about the loon here, and this quiet old mind flutters with the aspen leaves on the slightest breeze. Yeah, that's Wayne. He's sitting in this tired old mind, this quiet old mind, excuse me, this quiet old mind flutters with the aspen leaves. You know, aspen, they have that thin, flat stem, so they can really, that's Populus tremuloides, quaking aspen. They're really toss in the wind with the slightest breeze. They're turning. Yeah. Well, this quiet old mind flutters with the aspen. It's so easy to just put the mind just to flutter now. But it's the awareness, being aware of what's going on, being aware of what's, being aware when the grasping is beginning to take place. And it isn't even like, oh, don't grasp. No, but just notice that the grasping is happening. It's just awareness. It's not awareness and then do something about it. No, it's just, that's the problem. Then we think, well, now I got to do something because we think we're dealing with something solid here. But actually, it's all fluid. We look at that fluidity here too. But in this mind of this old man here flutters like the aspen leaves with the slightest breeze. And then the last one I had here, I've skipped quite a few of. This is just a small selection from what Wayne puts out there. But anyway, last one I had for today was I thought I could get to possibly, but leaf fluttering breeze, shimmering filtered sunlight, already enough. That's it. There's a mind that is content with very little, content with just what is showing up. And he's learned long ago, probably had some inkling of this even as a youth. Before that, when that country spoke to him when he came up as a teenager, did a trip up there. He had to go back. He's from Iowa originally, but he had to go back up to Ely because he could feel this. I don't know if this is something that you can learn or not, but it can speak to us. And if you get in not the habit, but perform the exercise of allowing your mind to really get settled from time to time, it opens up in freedom, really. And I think Wayne has a mind such as that. And so he's an amazing guy. I think it'd be great if we could find a way to get this guy published. But I don't know how to do it, and with poetry and that sort of thing. But anyway, thank you, Wayne, if you're out there. And thank you all. Maybe I should ask you, is there a comment or anything anybody wants to make? But we have gone over the hour, so I should end it here.
Peter
Okay, Peter.
Kiki, what's Wayne's last name?
Oh, Wayne Lewis,
Okay.
Lewis.
Got
He might be on the screen there. I don't know, Wayne, am I? I told him I might be doing this and he was okay with it, so anyway,
Beautiful.
yeah. If you are there, Wayne, maybe you should take a bow or something. I don't know. Anyway, we better end it before I get him or myself in trouble here. So, but thank you again.